Chapter 7 NEGIRE was dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Not dangerous in that she would hurt him, she could certainly, but given his quirkless nature that was simply his reality. No, NEGIRE was dangerous in a more subtle way, like a skeleton in his closet just waiting to ruin his whole life and that he had no control over. Not that NEGIRE was trying to do any of that. True to her word after making her intentions known, NEGIRE acted just the same as she always did. No, aside from a few hints that were quickly becoming more and more obvious to him, NEGIRE was perfect. She was happy as always, cheerful as always, asked questions as always, and was a huge help, as always. No, the problem was him. Izuku sighed, looking over the same paper once more. It was the last bit of work he had to do before the new semester started. But once again he found his mind wandering towards NEGIRE. He already had difficulties not seeing his students as his friends, and at first, he thought nothing of it. But, now with NEGIRE's he couldn't help but see her as a potential romance. And it was more than a little distracting, just knowing that she had a crush on him. She hadn't even done anything since then. It wasn't like he wanted to get her in trouble over this. No, there was a firm line that was allowed and NEGIRE hadn't crossed it. What on earth was he supposed to do about all of this? I am coming. The door to the teacher's room slammed open and the last person Izuku ever would have thought entered the room dressed in a tight-fitting yellow pinstripe suit. All Might. Through the door like a normal person. Izuku fell backward, rolling out of his chair and gawking upwards at his all-time favorite hero. All Might. He stammered, trying to get back onto his feet. What are you doing here? All Might was here? Now? At UA? He had heard he was in the area, but for him to suddenly appear at UA during the spring break while he was the only teacher in the room, something strange was going on. Was he dreaming? If it was the first one where NEGIRE wasn't asking him weird questions. Not that she needed to know that she's been in his dreams. I'm a new teacher here. All Might pointed a massive thumb into his chest and smiled, his near 7-foot-tall figure dominating the room. And you must be Dave's boy, young Midoriya, if I'm not mistaken. He's told me a lot about you. All Might placed both hands on his hips and let out a laugh. I think he considers you the son he never had. But don't let little Melissa hear that. You're a teacher here. He had to be dreaming. Just had to be. Certainly, I believe I'll even be splitting classes with you. All Might held out a hand over his mouth like he was telling a secret, despite his voice remaining the same volume. I must apologize to you though. It appears as though Nizo has been piling on my workload onto you and I forced you to do all the interviews solo. Thank you for your hard work. Izuku blinked slowly and nodded. Yep. He was dreaming. It wasn't that big of a deal. I managed to get everything done in the end. Haha, that's wonderful. I see you're everything that Dave said you were. Melissa seemed to think highly of you as well. All Might patted him on the back, knocking the wind out of him so fast that the resulting vacuum brought it back in. He said that you were a genius when it came to quirks and that he trusts you with all of his heart. All Might's hand rested on his shoulder as the #1 hero took a breath. And because we will be working together, there is something that I must trust you with. Yep. This was very much a dream. He hadn't had a dream like this in a while. I'm flattered, All Might. Really, All Might was complimenting him. But I'm just some kid that really likes quirks. I'm nothing special. Nonsense, I've seen your research. You're one of the brightest minds of your generation. In addition to that, you have a natural desire to help others. That's how Dave found you, was it not? All Might took a step back and squared his shoulders. Perhaps if you were a few years younger my search would be over. But, as it stands, perhaps you can help me. I mean, I'd be happy to help, but I'm not sure what I can really do for you, All Might. Izuku let out a breath of air, his shoulders slumping to one side. I'm just some kid that really likes quirks and heroes. Exactly. All Might pounded his chest. Normally, I wouldn't expose myself such as this, but the word of my friends and my sidekick combined with this gut feeling I have about you tell me that this is right. Steam erupted from All Might, and in its place was a skinny, malnourished man with blonde hair. I need you to help me find the next pillar of peace and justice. Yep. He was dreaming. XXXX. NEGIRE blinked as she saw Izuku-sensei wandering around outside. The late March showers had been persistent in her spring break, which had put a serious damper on her fun. Sure, she spent a lot of time with her friends, watching movies and having a few study sessions that turned into pillow fights, but it just lacked the usual zest she associated with spring. With another sip of her tea and finished it. She might not have been planning on seeing Izuku-sensei before classes started again, but when her dorky-sensei was out wandering the streets without an umbrella again, who was she to just let the opportunity pass her by? Besides, if he kept walking out there in the rain he'd get a cold. Finishing her tea and leaving money on her table, she rushed out the door to catch up to him. She flew across the street, on purpose this time, and landed right next to him. He looked lost in thought, more than normal at any rate. It wasn't until she was right next to him with her umbrella covering him did he realize she was there. "Negire, what are you doing here?" he asked, shaking his head briefly. "Protecting you from the rain, sensei," she hummed, swaying from side to side, giving him time to process things. "But what are you doing here, sensei? I thought you were still at UA getting things ready." Izuku blinked and shook his head again before looking around. "Sorry about that, Negire. But then I went for a walk and I guess I got lost in thought." "You took a walk in the rain?" she asked, raising an eyebrow at him. "Without an umbrella?" "I mean, I've run out to dance in the rain, but you're completely soaked, Izuku-sensei. What happens if you get a cold?" Well," he stammered, blushing as she drew in close. "Well, I just had a lot on my mind is all, and I forgot my umbrella at UA. You really shouldn't be too concerned about me," thought Negire. She handed him the umbrella and started to push him from behind. His back was absolutely soaked. "We're going straight home. You're completely soaked. I wouldn't be surprised if you ruined your vest." "Negire? What? You don't have to. I can get home on my own." She stopped and walked in front of him, hands on her hips and one eyebrow raised. "Either I walk you home, or I fly you home." Actually, the idea of carrying Izuku to his apartment bridal style was really tempted. But he probably wanted some dignity. Besides, trying to fly with someone might be hard, though maybe she should practice for a rescue mission. Okay, don't get so pushy, Negire." Izuku sighed, and began to lead the way to his apartment. "I just have a lot on my mind is all." "You always have a lot on your mind, though. Like you have more on your mind than I have questions about things, and that's like, mega bizarro." She hummed, enjoying the fact that Izuku-sensei was now carrying her umbrella. "No wonder you always forget your umbrella. You got me there." He smiled at her, raising an eyebrow. "Though for some reason you always seem to show up whenever I do forget it. Why is that?" She shrugged. "Well, someone has to keep track of you. I bet Melissa had to constantly take care of you back on Island." The guilty look on Izuku's face told her that she was not wrong. "Well, she did do a lot for me. Making sure I was fed and, achoo. Your immune system is bad, sensei. Am I going to have to wait for you every day when there's a rainstorm?" Izuku sniffed and rubbed his nose with his sleeve. The fabric was so wet that it was nearly transparent. "You do that even when it's not raining. And I'm fine. This is just achoo, allergies." "I'm fairly certain allergies don't make you shout achoo, sensei. Now come on, let's get going before things get worse." She turned her head and looked at a nearby market. "Actually, didn't Izuku-sensei mention that he doesn't really cook?" "Actually, 1 second, I'll be right back." She spun, flying towards the store, and emerged a moment later with a bag full of vegetables and other soup stuff. The sight that greeted her was Izuku-sensei looking considerably more miserable and a bit like a lost, and thoroughly soaked, puppy. He sniffed his nose, sounding like it was already full of snot. "What did you get?" "Dinner," she beamed, holding up both bags. "Thanks for waiting." "No problem, it's your umbrella." Another sniffle. "So, what's been on your mind, sensei?" "More than usual?" she asked as they turned another street. They were close to his apartment, maybe a few streets away. Maybe she should have dragged him to hers. Wait, that would be much worse for him if someone found out. Her going into his apartment was already risky, but him going inside hers would probably be too much. Well, I met All Might today, and talked to him for a while." Izuku sniffled. A smile on his face. "Apparently he's going to be teaching the hero course to the first years." "Oh." She blinked, staring at a group of kids as they crossed the road. "I don't think I'm supposed to know that yet." Izuku-sensei shrugged. "I didn't know until today, and I'll be working with him a lot apparently. He was supposed to be the one helping me during those interviews." "Oh, well, I guess I would have found out in a few days when class started up again." "True, I'm still trying to process the whole thing." They continued all the way up to Izuku's apartment, and then stopped at his door. Thanks for the help, NEGIRE. I'll see you, at school. Oh no you don't, Izuku. She pressed a finger into his chest, holding up the bag of food she bought. I'm going to cook you dinner to help you get over your cold. But no buts, you need this, Izuku-sensei, and I'm not taking no for an answer. XXXX. He caved. He caved hard. Very very hard. He looked into the small kitchen he had as NEGIRE hummed to herself. The apron his mother had gotten him was being used for the first time for its intended purposes. Her normally long flowing hair was tied back into a ponytail, and he had a hard time not thinking that NEGIRE was actually really cute. That and her food had smelled amazing. The smell hadn't hit him when he was in the bath minutes ago, but at that point, he was too focused on the fact that NEGIRE was 2 rooms away while he was naked. And now he was sitting at his kotetsu as he watched NEGIRE cook. This was wrong on so many levels. He shouldn't have a student in his apartment cooking him dinner. He shouldn't be enjoying it. He shouldn't be wanting it to happen more often. But he was. Hey NEGIRE. Yes, Izuku. She said his name again in that cute way she had. It was so different when she didn't include the sensei. It was far too personal and sent a shiver down his spine. She turned to look at him, smiling brightly, a ladle in one hand as she poured soup into a bowl. What is it? Oh, I just. He paused. Okay, he really was sick. Well, I just wanted to know why, 'cause you're sick. I like cooking, and I wanted to see the inside of your apartment. She looked around. It's cute and cleaner than I thought. Oh, thanks, but that's not what I meant. She slid the bowl in front of him. It was a thick and healthy broth filled with vegetables. It kind of looked like some of the soups that the American restaurants offered on Island. It also smelled fantastic. Oh, NEGIRE sat across from him, blowing on her own bowl. Then what did you mean? I wanted to know why you told me that you like me. That sounded more awkward than he wanted it to, but was probably the right amount of awkward. I mean, you said you wanted to wait until you graduated, but if that was true, then why tell me now and not when you graduated? Oh, she blew onto her soup again. Her smile sent a chill down his spine. I could have waited, but I wanted you to know so that when I do graduate, I'm not just your student anymore. I wanted to put the idea of me being your girlfriend in your head before that. I guess that was kind of manipulative. Sorry, Izuku. He probably shouldn't tell her that it worked. Besides, you seem like the dense kind that would have problems accepting girls' feelings even if she confessed to your face. She probably wasn't wrong. And this was a fun chapter to write. It was originally going to be a bit longer with an extra scene, but that got moved into next chapter. Follow me on Twitter. Donate to my Ko-fi. It's going to be my birthday this Sunday, so hint hint. Chapter 8. NEGIRE hummed as she moved about the playground, getting things all for Izuku-sensei's class set up. There were even more things this year. But that made sense. He had like 3 classes he needed to teach. It still sucked that he wasn't going to be teaching the 3rd years. But at least she got to be his ta for one of the classes. She spun, setting up another obstacle in the ceiling, a set of bars that were dangling at different levels and angles. She had no idea what they were for, but they looked pretty. Twirling in the air, she saw the others hard at work. Mirio and Tamaki were also setting up some new goodies, and then there was that pink-haired girl with the cool goggles and the big boobies, May. She was currently working on air. It was a thing. While Izuku was pacing in front of the door, going over his clipboard like a hawk. With a smile, she dove down towards him, stopping just short of crashing down into him. She circled him, like a shark in the air, waiting for him to pay attention to her. Normally he was aware of her before she was even aware of him, and he'd been extra jumpy since she told him her intentions. Which was good. It meant he was thinking about them. But right now he was completely lost. Reaching over, she flicked a bit of his hair and he didn't even look up. His hair was so fluffy. Maybe she should ambush him and give him a haircut? It was getting rather long, wasn't it? No doubt that would leave her adorable sensei trembling the whole time though. In many ways, Izuku was just as chicken-hearted as Tamaki, but he had this odd bravery about him that acknowledged those fears he had and kept pushing forward. He really was amazing. Or maybe that was just her crush talking. Izuku-sensei, she sung, plucking one of his hairs as he turned past her again. He jolted straight up, like someone had cracked a whip, his posture being corrected as he turned to look right at her. His face went red and he touched the back of his head. Oh, NEGIRE? What is it? Nothing, really. You just looked like you needed a distraction. She spun around and sat down in the air, her legs crossed. It wasn't perfect as she was slowly spinning upside down. She could correct it, but this was fine too. So I'm here to distract you. Did you finish all your quirk theory ideas for your new students? Oh, for the ones I think need it, yes, but for the majority of them, they're going to be dissecting their own quirk to try and develop their own exercises. I'll still be helping them along the way, but now I have 2 years to teach them what I taught you guys in 8 months. Izuku laughed and tapped his clipboard. That way I don't have to plan for 90 students, even if May could keep with the orders. The pink-haired girl popped her head out of her contraption for a moment before diving back into it like a squirrel. That kind of sounds like you're being lazy, Izuku-sensei. She hummed, now completely upside down. Thankfully she wasn't in her school uniform and just a plain shirt and a pair of shorts. Otherwise, she'd basically just be flashing. Izuku-sensei. His face went red and he turned to the side. Well, I was busy enough with one class, and learning to pace myself is important for a job like this. I'm still going to give it my all, it'll just take a bit longer. She squinted her eyes staring at his hair. It was so wild. He'd probably look really good with like an undercut. She'd have to get Yu's advice on that. Is there anything else, NEGIRE? Can I cut your hair? No. Darn. Wait. If he kept growing it, maybe he'd put it into a man bun or a loose top knot. He'd probably look super good like that. XXXX Class 1B had gone well enough yesterday. Naturally, they were disappointed that they were unable to do hero training that day, but thanks to that red-haired girl Itsuka, the class was quick to settle down and even enjoyed his first lecture. That practical portion went good as well, as he thought a lot of their quirks were really interesting, especially Nieto's. But now, it was time to introduce himself to Class 1A, which should be quite the event. On the one hand, Hitachi Shinzo was in that class, likely because of the interest that Aizawa had shown in the boy, but on the other hand, hello, he smiled at the class, walking towards the podium, trying really hard not to make eye contact with a certain student in seat number 17. Maybe he should have taken NEGIRE's offer for a haircut, or agreed for that plastic surgery trial back on Island. He really should have known that he would have ended up here. With his back to the class, he held his head high and began to write his name on the board. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'll be teaching you quirk theory as well as overseeing the practical DEKU. Oh fuck. Here we go. What the fuck is a quirkless loser like you doing here? Portion of the course where we will be he attempted to continue. Oi, Deku? Fucking talk to me. Katsuki. He heard one of the students start. It was a female. How do you know Midoriya-sensei? And you shouldn't talk to him like that? Bullshit. He's just some quirkless loser that used to babysit me. He was really fucking worthless. Katsuki continued to growl. I bet he's just a janitor pretending to be a teacher. Isn't that right, you useless dasho? So this was what it felt like to snap. He slammed his clipboard down onto the podium, the snap silencing the room. Katsuki Bakugo. Sit down and shut the fuck up. If you call me Deku one more time, or even so much as swear at me one more time, I will everything in my power to make sure that you're expelled. And I know Aizawa-sensei would agree with me in a heartbeat. The class was dead silent, and the look on that awful little shit's face as he stared at him wide-eyed was everything he had dreamed of. He really should have stopped babysitting Katsuki after the first time, but he had a crush on Mitsuki and the money was good. Stupid teenager was stupid. Still, it was technically because of Katsuki that he met Dave. He took a breath, overlooking his students, meeting each of their eyes for just a moment. Except for the girl with the invisible quirk, he just kind of guessed with her. He righted his tie and composed himself. Sorry about that? He smiled at them, trying to dispel his outburst. It is as Katsuki said, I did used to babysit him and I see that he hasn't matured at all. That got a few chuckles and a growl. I am indeed also quirkless, which means I was never a hero. So many of you might be wondering what I can teach you, which, considering how they had pro heroes teaching English, seemed a bit hypocritical. At least they had degrees and credentials. The answer is simple. I've spent 5 years on Island researching quirks. I know them inside and out, and the principal of UA agrees with me that knowing about quirks will make you better heroes. I've been a teacher here for 8 months and have worked with the students of Class 3B. If you want to see what my course and my knowledge can give help you achieve, watch them at the sports festival. He sighed again and smiled at them. Now then, are there any questions before we begin the introduction? His heart was pounding as he answered their questions. A few were personal questions, others were about Island. But most were directly tied to quirk theory. A few students, such as Momo and Hitachi, asked almost as many questions combined as NEGIRE did on his first day. Maybe he should have had some of his students show up to speak about the class? No, that would have been problematic. Tamaki wouldn't have been able to speak, Mirio would have wanted to fight them, and NEGIRE would have asked a lot of questions. A demonstration would be ideal, but without knowing the bases, new students would likely just assume that the abilities were their baseline without acknowledging their hard work. No, the best course forward was to demand their trust and teach them to the best of his abilities. Besides, he didn't have enough time to look over all of their quirks to formulate simple tricks. So, Midoriya-sensei, like what's the point of this class then? A pink-haired girl with black and yellow eyes, yellow horns, and pink skin asked, leaning back in her chair. Mina Ashido, she wasn't all that great at academics, but her practical skills were up there. Like, shouldn't we be learning this stuff in hero training? Yes, and no. He turned his back to them and began writing on the board. In the hero training course, you'll be learning how to perform a rescue and live combat skills. In my class you'll be learning to use your quirk to its fullest potential, and later in the year you'll be developing your super moves with me. He turned smiling at them all again. Does that clear things up? They started to roar with excitement at the idea of super moves. Well, most of them were. There were a few confused looks like they had no idea how to even make a super move with their quirk. And then there was Shoto Todoroki, who just looked at him indifferently. Katsuki just glared at him, his pen on the paper as he took notes. Or more likely drew angry drawings. Sensei. A boy with red hair shot his hand straight up. Eijiro Kirishima. How exactly can I improve my quirk? It's just making my skin hard. There's not a lot I can do with it. But that's the point of the class. To figure out how. Now let's get started. XXXX. So, you still have a crush on Midoriya-sensei? Yu asked with a heavy sigh, her hair now a vibrant green that just kind of popped. NEGIRE hummed, turning her head to the side as she smiled. Yep, I even told him that when I graduated that I'd be his girlfriend if he didn't already find someone. That made Yu groan as she sank back against the wall, her book bag being supported by her forehead. I had a feeling you'd go and do something crazy, but for you to actually confess to him. Sheesh. You make it sound like you never had a crush on a teacher. She laughed at her friend, poking her in the cheek. Didn't you have a giant crush on Izuku during your first year? Yu slapped her hand away, her face was starting to redden. I did, but I never confessed to him. Besides, you're making it sound like you're already in love with Midoriya-sensei and just waiting to marry him. Love. She hummed, tasting that word in her mind. Oh God, I'm just feeding you ideas now, aren't I? Maybe, she half-sung as she pushed off the wall, as Izuku exited the building. He was looking a bit more tired than normal, and it was only the third day of classes. Oh, I wanted to cut his hair soon. What style do you think would look good on him? Seriously? He kind of already has that sloppy hot nerd look going on. Just trim it a bit and he'd look better. Yu groaned, sliding her bag onto her shoulder. Well, you have fun with Midoriya-sensei. I'm going to go have a normal high schooler life and go to karaoke. Wait, karaoke? She looked at Midoriya-sensei, who was being ambushed by Mei, who had a new gadget. How did she make one already? As several of the other girls also began to crowd around him. She was not jealous. She was not jealous. Izuku looked over at her and smiled. He was pleading for help. Yep, she had nothing to worry about. He might be an adorable nerdy teacher, but he was still Izuku. She had almost nothing to worry about. She waved at him and turned to chase after Yu. Wait up, Yu. I want to go to karaoke too. So, Izuku-sensei. NEGIRE wrapped her arms around him from behind. Her soft and increasingly noticeable chest, to him at any rate, was pressed against his back as that familiar sweet scent that seemed to follow NEGIRE around wafted over him. Whatever spell NEGIRE had cast on him when she first confessed had been working. Do I get a reward for coming in second place at the sports festival? Oh, that was all. Wait. Reward? He squeaked and removed her from his back as she continued to float there, a cheerful smile on her face. What were the chances that she knew exactly what she was doing to him? Oh right, this was NEGIRE, who he had come to accept as a mad genius when it came to subtle social manipulations. That or he was just a lonely man and attention made him weak in the knees. "Ah, what did you have in mind, NEGIRE?" he asked, trying not to freak out. NEGIRE laughed as she landed next to him, hands on her back. "Well, since people are calling us the Big Three now, why don't you buy us dinner tonight? I know you don't have any plans." The truth is what kept that from being insulting. Truthfully, the only thing he had going for him was work. He really needed to go out and meet new people. But she did have a point. With the success of the Big Three, nobody would challenge how important his class was. Or at least they wouldn't for a little while. "Ah, sure, did you have some place in mind?" He blinked, watching her face light up. "That isn't expensive." "Oh, I know just the place." NEGIRE did a flip for no other reason than her pure joy and excitement for the idea. "I'll go tell Mirio and Tamaki. We can go tonight. We'll meet you at the gate, sensei." Before he could even speak, she had zoomed down the hallway with the same speed and grace that had won her second place at the sports festival. No matter how often he saw her do it, her ability to effortlessly swim through the air still put a smile on his face. "I guess I should check my bank before tonight." XXXX, it was just a ramen shop. "Are you sure this is the place where you guys want to eat?" Izuku asked, looking up at the shop sign dominated by a blonde whiskered man wearing a headband with a leaf on it. A giant Uzumaki right behind him. "Of course, sensei." Mirio laughed. "This place is full of memories for us, and now we want to share those memories with you as well." "Memories?" Izuku asked, looking back at his 3-star students. NEGIRE was bouncing on her feet, ready to dive headfirst into the shop, while Tamaki was drooling. Yuyu, who had just kind of joined them, nodded at him. "It's where these three became friends 2 years ago," Yuyu explained, her hair a deep scarlet red. He'd only seen her a few times and spoken to her fewer times, and each time she had a new hair color. She was NEGIRE's best friend. "Oh, you don't have to pay for me, by the way, sensei." His wallet was grateful, but his generosity refused the notion. "Nonsense, Yuyu. You might not have been in my classes, but you're still one of my students, I think." "Well, this is for them anyway, so if they want you to join, then I'll pay for it too." "You heard him, Yuyu." NEGIRE twirled behind Yuyu and began to push her into the ramen shop. "Come on, let's get our seats, I'm starving." Tamaki nodded and followed them in, his usual shyness being overpowered by his hunger. "Shall we, sensei?" Mirio nudged him in the arms and winking. "It's best not to keep a lady waiting." "Mirio," he gasped, nearly falling over. "Please don't joke like that." "How many people did NEGIRE tell?" "Haha. Sorry about that, sensei. I guess that joke went a little too far, but you have to admit, even from outside, you and NEGIRE would make a cute couple." "Was it that obvious?" With a sigh, he walked towards the shop, instantly being flooded by a hearty aroma that nearly kicked him in the ass. "Okay, maybe there was something to this ramen shop. Could we please talk about something else? I could get in trouble with something like that." "Oh, right, sorry, sensei." Mirio opened the curtain for him with his superior height and reach. Somehow he ended up sitting right in the middle, Mirio and Tamaki to his left with NEGIRE and Yuyu to his right. And before he knew it, the biggest bowl of ramen he had ever seen was placed right in front of him. A spice-filled aroma made him salivate at the smell of it, and the presentation was utterly delightful. "To Class 3B." Mirio broke his chopsticks and held them in front of his bowl. "To one more year." Yuyu cheered. "To Izuku-sensei." NEGIRE hummed. "To my students." He joined in, before diving into the bowl and letting the taste set in. He had spent so much time on Island eating foods from around the world he had almost forgotten what a good restaurant bowl of ramen looked like. And to full stomachs. Tamaki was the first to begin slurping. "Oh, hey, sensei," Mirio asked halfway through his bowl. "I've been meaning to tell you that Sir wants to meet you." His head snapped away from the bowl, dragging a good bit of noodles along with it, as he tried to speak. He slurped up the noodles, cheeks flushed by his own childish actions. But he must have heard Mirio wrong. Sir Nighteye wanted to meet him? Why? Was it about what All Might told him? Or was this something else? "He does." Mirio nodded. "Yeah, apparently, he's been looking forward to actually meeting you for a while. I think it's because I spoke so highly of you." "Hey, wait. That's not fair. Izuku-sensei, if you're going to meet Sir Nighteye, then you need to come meet Ryuko too. I'm sure she'd love to meet you." NEGIRE slapped her hands on the table, drawing his attention back towards her. Really? She was jealous of that. Fat gum too. He barely heard Tamaki mumble from the other side of Mirio. During the internship week, I should have enough time to visit all of your hero offices. Would it be too weird to bring his autograph book? Wait. He still needed to get All Might's autograph. Yay. NEGIRE cheered. You're going to love her, I just know it. XXXX, were sweaty palms normal? Of course, they were normal, that was why people had them. It was totally a thing and nothing to be even more nervous about. Especially since he was already so nervous that he was freaking out and about ready to hyperventilate. Sure, he had met All Might, but he didn't have any time or warning about that encounter to work himself into a frenzy. Besides, All Might was by all accounts a very friendly individual. Sir Nighteye was known for exactly not that. And he wanted to meet him. Was this a test? What if it was a test? What if they were busy? What if something was happening? What if he walked in and they were in the middle of some super important investigation and he ruins it? You must be the Midoriya-sensei. He spun on his heel to see a tall man with a centipede for a head, carrying a stack of papers and a briefcase. Mirio had told us a lot about you, and mentioned you'd be coming this week. I am Sensei Ryuko, a sidekick of Sir Nighteye. It is a pleasure to meet you. He placed the briefcase down and extended a normal hand towards him. Izuku took in and began shaking it. That's right. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sir Centipeder, sir. I'm here because my student Mirio said Sir Nighteye wanted to meet me. The bug-headed man's jaws clacked as he gave a polite laugh. I see what Mirio meant when he said you were nervous, but please come on inside. I can assure you our office is not as scary as we make it out to be. He nodded and followed the well-dressed man inside the building. It was a modest multi-story building, complete with an empty reception desk and a long single hallway that extended out into the back. I must say, you're quite impressive, Centipeder said as they passed an empty room. Not many at your age are able to graduate with full masters from I-Island, and then obtain a teaching job at UA all within a few months of each other. Especially since I-Island runs on the American school schedule. Oh, well, when you basically invent the whole field yourself you kind of get to make up the rules. He laughed, trying not to blush at the praise. I just really like quirks is all. You should learn to accept a compliment. Humbleness is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. More mandible clacking laughter. Sorry, I read that on a message board and had been wanting to say it for a while. Still, it does apply. Not many people invent a new field of study and application in much the same way you do. It still didn't really feel like he did anything impressive. Thank you. You're most welcome now then. Here we are. Centipeder opened the door and the sound of roaring laughter could be heard from inside the room. Standing off to the side looking quite scared as a blue-skinned girl with short hair, in the middle of the room was Sir Nighteye as he glowered at Mirio, who was strapped to a large metallic torture machine that was currently tickling him half to death. I'm sorry, sir. I'll make a better joke next time. Mirio roared with laughter. See that you. Sir Nighteye paused, standing straight and turning towards the door. Their eyes only met for a moment, before a deep frown spread across his face. The machine came to a stop. I take it you must be the famous Midoriya-sensei everybody seems to be so fond of. I am. His voice cracked loudly and his hands were shot straight to his sides. It's an honor to meet you, Sir Nighteye, sir. I've been a fan of your work for a while. I especially enjoyed your work in the Ubera case where you figured out that the student's quirk was spectral body, and how you worked him down. Oh, so you've heard about that case? Most people know me purely for my work with All Might. He pressed his glasses up and loomed over him. Why was everybody here so tall? Did quirks make people tall? Sometimes it really felt like that. A hand extended out to him, and Sir Nighteye smiled at him. It's a pleasure to meet you, Midoriya-sensei, Sir said simply, and the aura of menace he had moments ago was gone. I must say, I've been waiting to meet you for quite some time. You have. He took Sir's hand. The other man's grip was tight and he stared him in the eyes, making him uncomfortable. Did you see me with your quirk? A few times. But beyond that I found your thesis paper to be most intriguing. Sir let his hand go and stood at his full height once more. And I've seen what your training and theories have done to young Mirio, not to mention the others of his class. I originally thought you were wasting your talents with the position. I see now that evaluation was wrong. Oh, he found his hand falling to his side. The room was turning much more normal, and he felt his body relax as he began to smile at them. That was right. These were heroes, he had no reason to be nervous. Thank you, I've gotten a few people questioning why I'm teaching at UA. Why don't you come into my office for a bit? Sir turned, still smiling. Bubble girl, please let Mirio out of tickle hell, and Centipeder, could we get some tea? XXXX. Mirio watched as his sensei left for the day, a large smile on his face and his head held high. Even Sir seemed more relieved and happier than normal. Sir, did you see something with your quirk? Sir considered him for a moment and readjusted his glasses. Just a good friend, Mirio, just a good friend. XXXX. When she said that Izuku-sensei would love Ryuko, she did not mean for them to actually be flirting. Sure, she wouldn't stand in the way if Izuku got in a relationship with someone. But she was not okay with being the cause of that relationship? Oh, you must be joking. All Might said that. She heard Ryuko laugh from the table that her and Izuku were currently chatting over. It wasn't her normal laugh, it was her flirting laugh. A cup of tea and a few snakes was all that separated those two. You must be joking. I'm not. Izuku said loudly, somehow completely immune to the fact that he was talking to one of the top 10 most attractive and single female heroes in Japan. It was in a magazine, so it had to be true. He really doesn't know a lot about computers. He left most of that stuff to his sidekicks. I keep having to help him with programs. Oh my, it sounds like All Might is more of a grandpa than the #1 pro hero. Ryuko practically purred. Now, you must tell me, how is that grumpy old Aizawa doing? NEGIRE bit her finger as she tried to drone out the obvious sound of her crush and her boss flirting. She should have seen this coming. Izuku was cute, smart, and really a just wonderful guy. And Ryuko was finally getting out of a slump after her most recent breakup. She clacked on the keyboard angrily, hoping to drown out the sounds of them flirting and the growing knot in her stomach. Maybe something will happen and they'd have to leave sooner. So, tell me, Izuku-sensei. Ryuko's teasing tone could be heard from a mile away. Are you seeing anybody? Her eye twitched. What are you talking about? Izuku stuttered and stammered. She turned back to see him nearly falling out of his chair. His face was bright red. Like a girlfriend. Oh. Apparently Izuku wasn't aware that they had been flirting for the past hour. She really needed to remember he was kind of dense. Instantly, at least half of her jealous vanished as she watched Ryuko try to chase after a catch that was already in someone else's bag. Okay, so she was still a little worried, because really, who was going to try and stop a dragon from taking what it wanted? And now she was picturing Izuku as a princess that she needed to rescue. Why did her brain do weird things when she wasn't asking questions? Oh, so you are single. Ryuko let out a noise that was close to a growl. Well, why don't we go on a date tonight and see if we can't fix that? Izuku fell out of his chair, scrambling backwards. His face was very red. I'm sorry, I'm. He stood and headed towards the door at a half jog. I have a really bad allergy to incredibly forward women. There was a silence as everybody in the office stared at him. He looked like he was about to explode. Sorry. Izuku squeaked and then bolted out the door. Well, that went great. Smiling to herself, NEGIRE floated over to where Ryuko was still sitting, a grumpy frown on her face. Ryuko, I think your desperation was showing. That earned her a real growl as Ryuko stood up, her eyes slit as she was about to turn into a dragon. NEGIRE, let's go out back. I need to work off some steam about this annoying little student I took on as a sidekick. Okay. NEGIRE beamed. It'd been a while since Ryuko had wanted to spar, and this was a good chance. What followed? Chapter 7. NEGIRE was dangerous.